Hello everybody and welcome back to Typical City. I swear it feels only like yesterday I was saying Kevin De Bruyne could be leaving Manchester City, and that's because it was. That's because it was yesterday, in fact. It exactly was that. And now, today, he's staying because Pep Guardiola, that incredibly reassuring man who I absolutely adore, just the sight of him, do you know what I mean? Just the sight of him. Doesn't he just put you at ease? You just watch Pep Guardiola and hear him speak. All of your fears, all of your concerns about the upcoming season, he just dampens all the fires that everyone is worried about and all the fires that are very much being ignited by the general media and just putting everything to bed. Kevin De Bruyne isn't going anywhere. Pep Guardiola has confirmed that out of the mouth of Guardiola himself, saying he is staying, which is absolutely fantastic news. Didn't really clarify much on Ederson, which is a subject for another day, an interesting one as well. So that's still a little bit up in the air, uncertain, but I still have a funny feeling that Ederson's also going to be staying. What this means for Eberechi Eze, because this was all from the same publication, I think it was Darren Lewis of the Daily Mirror, which brings into question the whole credibility of the media in general, especially these publications, the paid services as well. That's what I find fascinating. You only need to look at all of the media across in particular in the UK. Every single one of them is talking about the departures, leaving Manchester City. This player's on his way out. Alvarez is on his way out. Oscar Bobb's on his way out. Rico Lewis on his way out. Ederson's on his way out. Kyle Walker's on his way out. Who else we got? Kevin De Bruyne is on his way out. Of course, Bernardo Silva, that's a given. That's every window, Bernardo Silva. So 7 players. Someone's lying somewhere. Do you know what I mean? There has got to be someone lying along that line of 7 players. Half of our squad is on its way out. Is it? Really? Really? Come on. Get over it. I mean, the whole problem for me is the fact that it's a paid service as well. People are paying for these newspapers, having to go into a shop and buy a newspaper or buy a subscription online to view it online. You have to pay. When you've got the real credible journalists out there now, Fabrizio Romano for one, who is providing his services for free to the world, he's getting paid, but you don't have to pay for it. You're being scammed. We're all being scammed, aren't we? And it's an absolute joke. Players leaving, blah, blah, blah. And I've had enough of it, to be honest. And the fact that Eberechi Eze was linked to Manchester City as a byproduct to Kevin De Bruyne leaving, therefore that surely means no truth to that as well, because Eberechi Eze, as good a player he is, he isn't fit to tie the laces of Kevin De Bruyne. Not a chance. I think he's a brilliant player, and he could definitely bring something to Manchester City, to any team that Eze would join. Is a good player, but when you're talking about Kevin De Bruyne, it's a specific caliber, it's a specific category of player. The 1%. Do you know what I mean? He's an absolute class act, and Eze's nowhere near that. There aren't very few players in the world are anywhere near Kevin De Bruyne's level. Which is why it's fantastic news. And I think most of you agreed with me yesterday as well, because I stated early on in the video that I believe he's going to stay. I don't believe there's any truth to this. But it's a topic that needed discussing because it was spreading like wildfire, as these rumours often do. And Pep has shut it down immediately, bringing into question the credibility of the media and the whole as well. But the links continue to flow with players like Oscar Bobb, who I also want to apologise to you, the viewer, because there's been videos lately that I've done that, and his name should have come up. I've been talking about Savio and what we're going to do on the wings. I'm still concerned for Oscar Bobb and his minutes because of the likes of Savio and Doku. What order of ranking does Oscar Bobb find himself? But he's got a little bit more versatility, similar to Jack Grealish. He could play inside, but will Pep play him inside? He's also played as an out-and-out centre-forward, Oscar Bobb, as well. So there's a possibility for that. He's shown an eye for goal at youth level. Really good eye for goal. And that finish at Newcastle, by the way, was absolutely ridiculous. But I wanted to apologise for not mentioning him enough, because I feel like he is very much part of the first team. But he's also being linked with moves away to Chelsea and Newcastle. But again, putting water on the fire. Oscar Bobb himself this time with a quote in a most recent press conference saying, "I think playing for this manager has always been a dream," talking about Pep there. If I have to wait a bit longer to get more playing time, I don't mind. With Phil's talent, there was no question he was going to break through. It took some time. People said he should go and get playing time. He waited, and it paid off. There has been times I thought it would be hard, but as soon as I got the smallest opportunity, there are no other options. And for me, that is absolute music to my ears to hear a youth player to speak with such authority and maturity about his own career as well, to recognise the possible options that are out there. He will have seen the likes of Cole Palmer, which is what the media are doing. They're seeing like they're putting two and two together and getting five, as they often do. Like City sold young players last time. They sold Cole Palmer. They sold them to Chelsea. And then that player turned out to be a very good player. Let's all make another story about a negative headline that can make City look like they are just getting rid of their youth players for a little, well, it's not a little amount of money. They'd have to pay top dollar to get Oscar Bobb. But in terms of the players leaving and going and flourishing at other football clubs away from Manchester City, that's the narrative they're trying to create. I think Cole Palmer's been fantastic, by the way, at Chelsea, and there is a large element of regret. I think that City, I don't think we're expecting him to hit the ground running quite as well as he has done at Chelsea. And there's no two ways about it that it's like, I would like Cole Palmer to be at City. No, I'm not going to deny that, because the things that he's done since he's left is pretty impressive. But there's no reason to say Oscar Bobb can't go and do those things. And with words like that, with following on, as long as he can, his performances can echo those words when he gets onto the word, and if he even comes close to replicating the career that Phil Foden has now got in front of him and behind him as well, don't forget, then we've got an absolute worldie on our hands once again. Minutes are going to be the issue, so I'm just going to quickly show you some of the minutes for a few players, in fact, as well, because there is a bit of a system change here from me, because Pep seems to be targeting the youth players, because there's a couple other players that have been recently interviewed. Pep recently spoke on another youth player that I'll mention shortly, as well, as his possible future could be at Manchester City, which is a surprise, and I'll get onto that shortly. But quickly showing the Oscar Bobb stats of last season, your basic, absolute fundamental stats. I'm not going to go into detail like I have been doing lately, but just minutes, really. So 26 appearances, 819 minutes. I think he'd like to get a few more minutes there under his belt for the upcoming season. I think he needs to be breaking 1,500 next season. Would be more suited for his career's trajectory. If he continues to get 800 minutes this season, then I wouldn't be surprised if he's looking at another club in 2025, because I think he needs to be doubling those minutes now for the upcoming season if he wants his future to be at Manchester City. 2 goals and 2 assists isn't bad at all. Rico Lewis is in the same bracket for me, but I was shocked to see how many minutes Rico Lewis got last season. So another indication that another player that Pep is keeping. Obviously, Rico Lewis has also been linked away from the football club, because that's what we do now. Every City player has to leave to get some sort of success, apparently, even though it's a guaranteed trophy if you stay at Manchester City. Rico Lewis's minutes double Oscar Bobb's, with 1,600 compared to Oscar Bobb's 800 minutes, and only one appearance more than Oscar Bobb, who had 26 appearances compared to Rico's 27 appearances, which just goes to show that appearances don't tell you much, really. Time on the pitch. Rico Lewis is being trusted to start matches. Oscar Bobb's were clearly substitute appearances. One very in particular, vitally important substitute appearances away at St James's Park that got us all 3 points and won us the league effectively. So brilliant from Oscar Bobb's point of view in that regard, but still, he wants to be getting these sort of minutes. Oscar Bobb does, because that's good from Rico Lewis. Rico Lewis equally wants to be getting a little bit closer to 2,000. I think Pep loves Rico Lewis. I love Rico Lewis. He's an underrated youth player of us. I see a lot of City fans have a problem with Rico Lewis because he's not the razzle-dazzle winger that all the Ballon d'Or fans like, that attacking player that has to get headlines. He's a quality player, Rico Lewis. He's 19. Oscar Bobb's 21. 19 years old, Rico Lewis. And he's getting double the minutes of Oscar Bobb and playing in the nucleus of a Manchester City side that is managed by Pep Guardiola. There is no two ways about it. This is a potential superstar, Rico Lewis, an absolute worldie of a player that will be playing for England central midfield before you know it. Guaranteed, definitely. 2 goals and 4 assists isn't bad at all. And finally, the other youth player that could be a surprise that is going to be challenging the likes of Rico Lewis is James McAtee. Quick fire of his stats up from last season, playing for Sheffield United, of course, on loan from Manchester City, 33 appearances, 1,945 minutes, which is only 300 minutes more than Rico got. 5 goals and 4 assists. There's a player there, comments from Pep Guardiola most recently. I'll read them to you now. I would love to have to keep him, James McAtee that is, next season with us, because he's a special guy to play in small spaces, in the pocket, and we don't have many. When you play in the Premier League in a team fighting to not be relegated, you get something special. I am curious to see Maka especially. He's a player I have high opinions of, and I would like if he can insert properly with the team, which, I mean, if Pep's saying that about you, there is huge potential for him to be part of the first team as well next season, which is a rare thing to happen in this day and age for a player to go out on loan, come back to the club that he's left to go out on loan from, and then come back and get back into the first team. That rarely happens, especially at top-end clubs like Manchester City. You know, it's rare. You do see it a little bit more in your middling clubs, your top 10 sort of clubs, but for a club the size of City and the team, the quality of players that we have at our disposal, for James McAtee to come back from Sheffield United and find himself in the first team of Manchester City, he isn't going to get the minutes. He's going to be looking at the Rico Lewis minutes. But, I mean, if he can play in those pockets successfully and Pep Guardiola can get the most out of him, is Pep changing? Are we going for a less glamorous transfer market this window with Savio, maybe one more? Because I think we have to go for a defensive midfielder. Is it going to be Bruno Guimaraes? Are we going to pull a big transfer off, 100 million potentially for Bruno Guimaraes? I don't think he's worth 100 million. I think 80 million is a little closer to the region. I think City are more willing to pay for the likes of Bruno Guimaraes. But outside of that, could we be just really showcasing to the world that we've signed 1 and 2 players, Savio and another defensive midfielder, whether that's Kimmich, it's not going to be João Neves by the sounds of it anymore, Bruno Guimaraes potentially. Someone else, if you got an idea in mind in the comments, then let me know if you think there's a defensive midfielder you think City should be targeting. But we should be targeting a defensive midfielder to cover as well as play alongside Rodri. But could we see Rico Lewis do it? Could we see Matheus Nunes do it? Could we see Kovacic do it? You know, we've got players that can play in that role. And is that what Pep's going for now? Changing the image of City and going back to a more very much youth-based, bringing them through, letting them flourish at Manchester City. And I don't think there'll be a lot of City fans that won't be happy with that. I know there will be some glamorous, like seeking the glamour City fans out there that will want to see a big name come in to really get the juices going, and bringing back a player on loan from Sheffield United and playing him in central midfield isn't quite the same as bringing in a £80 million Brazilian from Newcastle, Premier League proven quality player that Bruno Guimaraes is. I get that. And they're not the same player either. They're not going to play in the same position. But the level of transfer news from City could be small for incomings if we're going to be pushing the youth players and promoting them further to get more minutes in the Manchester City squad for next season. Are you happy with that, Blues? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We are blue. And get in the comments below. Like and subscribe to Typical City, and I'll see you in the next one.
This is Typical City now, holding up silverware.